to get started. So, Madam Clerk, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? All right, moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you, Council. Madam Clerk, we have items on final reading. Ordinances 5A through F has already been read into the records, okay? So you won't have to do that. Now we will move on to ordinances on first reading. Madam Clerk, would you please read 6A?
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to rezone part of property located at 4261 Shallowford Road, more particularly described herein, from R1 residential zone to M2 light industrial zone.
Seeing no lights, let's read item 6B, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, Articles 2 and 5, Sections 38.2, 38.1, 83.17, 38.305, 38.306, 38.3235, 38.3337, and 38.34110, relating to outdoor storage and mini warehouses.
Okay, Councilman, where are we at? Oh, there you go. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman.
Let's thank our vice chair for that. I got combobulated here for a second.
While we were
on this
waiting,
button.
I saw Mr. Bridger make his way to the microphone. So, John, can I ask for you to give us one more time?
Sure.
Because we've deferred this item, and I know there was some confusion on what exactly we are doing here, the purpose and the intent of this. And then I would like to also talk about maybe putting into Planning and Zoning Committee discussion on how many warehouses are labeled in C2.
Sure.
And talk a little bit about that at a future date.
So I'll start with the status quo, where we are today as far as just the current code without any changes. Right now, you can do mini warehouses in C2 by right. You just have to, it's difficult to interpret when you need to screen it. So what this amendment does is specify, it does two things. It really just defines what is outdoor storage so that we don't have junk being stored that's supposed to be outdoor storage. I think the other thing that it does, it specifies more clearly how it should be screened. I heard clearly from council, I think two things, how we differentiate between indoor climate storage screening and mini warehouses, and also the thought about, which you and I discussed earlier today, about whether or not that should be a special permit. Mm-hmm. So what I would recommend, you're still going to need to be screened. I think the second question is, does it be allowed by right or through special permit? I think that requires a separate zoning text amendment, which we're happy to look into on behalf of council. Again, we would just like to make sure that we're following your direction, that you would just kind of vote an affirmative collectively as a body to ask us to do that, which I understand it would happen at Planning and Zoning Committee meeting.
Very good. Thank you. I yield, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford. Councilwoman Burrs.
So let me make sure I've got this straight. Let me ask you, you heard all of our concerns about screening storage.
Yes.
Okay. As we grow, we're getting more and more of those things,
Yes.
whether they're indoor or outdoor, and they can be a blight on an area.
Sure.
So does this cover outdoor storage, and now we have, and mini warehouses? Does this meet, in your opinion, what we're asking for, or does it need more work?
I think as a starting point, it meets what we're asking for. I think the larger question, I think y'all asking, which would be, do we want to create a special permit so it's not a by right use, but something that would be really more approved on a case-by-case basis? I did do during lunch, so take this with a grain of salt, thumb through Knoxville and Memphis's development codes, and they do differentiate between mini warehouse storage and climate control as far as what's allowed by right versus special permit. So I think there's a precedent for how you treat those differently. I just think we need to do some homework, compare notes. The other thing I'd recommend, this is where taking a project that's this and not letting it become this. We are, as you know, we're getting ready to do a comprehensive zoning code assessment. So that's going to take a look at a whole host of things, probably including this issue. So my recommendation, because I know we don't want to wait, that study and its recommendations probably won't be complete till first quarter next year. I don't think you all want to wait that long. So as long as we keep it as a simple fix, if you follow me. So I think then the simple fix would be, hey, let's at least have a special permit review for that so it's not just ubiquitous in C2. I think that's a simple fix that would not require a lot of staff time.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so I'm not sure I got the answer to
I
my
apologize
question.
if I didn't.
Okay, I'm good with the special permit. This all started when we said something to screen these places.
That's right.
All right. So my question is, does this have any loopholes or anything that would allow people to have storage, indoor or outdoor, that's not properly screened?
It does not require screening of an indoor climate-controlled building. This
So,
would be mini warehouses and outdoor
Okay.
storage.
so many warehouses are those little, what are you calling climate controlled?
Climate control is one structure where all the units are internal to the building, so you don't see a line, like a shed-like buildings with
Okay.
individual doors. It's all in one structure.
Okay, so it would be like the one where, at East Brainerd Road and Brainerd Road, where the old Big Lots used to be?
I
It's
believe
all
so.
indoor, so it wouldn't have to be,
It wouldn't have to be, if it was all indoor, it would not have to be screened. You have to have, still have street yard landscaping, but you wouldn't have an actual visual screen of the building itself.
and so why isn't that part of this?
You can elect, if you want, it to be something for you all as a body to deliberate, if you want to add it. I think it's a matter of adding that as part of the screening requirements. I mean, if you think you as a body, I mean, I'd love to hear some, I guess, deliberation amongst you all as a body, if that's something you want to do. And if that's the case, then we'll do it. Dallas, did you want to come up?
I think this would address your concerns when they start long-term storage of vehicles outside. Is that what you're worried about? If they don't fence the parking lot and put anything outside, that building sits there just like the department store that was there before. This would address if they put those metal buildings, a lot of times they put those metal buildings out in the front with the rows of garage doors, and then they start storing everything from
But you would not
anything
screen,
with wheels on it, because that's basically what our definition of a vehicle is.
but not climate control.
But you wouldn't screen the building itself other than whatever landscape requirement was. But if you chose to fence the parking lot, because this had definitions of what can be stored, then they would have to screen that. But, you know, right now it's an existing parking lot, and by definition, existing parking lot is for the storage of vehicles, and the definition of vehicles is basically anything with wheels. So that's what we're doing. That's why if you build a new one and tell us you want to store vehicles out there, we won't necessarily let you build a parking lot. If you have an old use that has a parking lot already, you have the existing storage of vehicles, so it's like a grandfathered use, and there's nothing in our regulations that says I can't fence my parking lot. So it would not screen, if everything was inside the big box, it does not have a screening requirement. But
I think that's what
if you wanted to store vehicles outside and fence the parking lot, there would be that requirement. And if you wanted to build those rows of warehouses, there would be a requirement to screen now on existing. Anything new, you know, what do we call the adaptive reuse of these old boxes, you know? So if you wanted to store vehicles out there, you would have a screening requirement. And we've also put in this limiting the type. We have defined vehicles more in depth so that you can't put tree trimming trucks out there and bulldozers on trailers and stuff like that. You could store boats and motorhomes and items such as that. That's what we're trying to do
Okay,
with this.
if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're telling me that if I decide to put everything inside a big box and call it Joe's Storage, I don't have to screen it? But if I built it like a series of garages, I do have to screen it. What is the thinking behind that?
Well, I mean, it could be the same thing though, as like the salvage, what's it, Southeastern Salvage, which sells retail products in a warehouse-type building. We don't currently today have screening for warehouse-type buildings. There's not a requirement. Here's my recommendation. I mean, I know what you're getting at, is like
Yeah.
thinking a little bit about, my recommendation is maybe make that part of the zoning code assessment to see how other places are approaching it. And maybe that kind of informs our thinking a little bit. I do think what we're doing is we're shifting from a use to a form question. What I mean by that is you're thinking about, okay, based on what that building looks like, do you need to screen it or not? Is kind of what I'm hearing. Is that a fair synopsis? Because if it's a, I hear you saying, if it's a commercial type structure that has glass and that kind of stuff, it may not be to screen, but if it's a industrial looking type building with no windows, it should. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that while we're thinking about these kind of places are
Sure.
proliferating in all kinds of forms,
Right.
and they become a blight on the area, economically, it gives a cooling tendency to the
Sure.
area. I can think of some on Lee Highway right now, and we're still thinking about it,
Well,
and
the first action is screening certainly what's being put outside. I think the second is, I think what Councilman Ledford is saying is not allow them by right in C2, but have a special permit. So that's another way to control it, is saying it's not a by right use anymore. It requires a special permit, which also then enables you, if there are additional conditions to make that work,
Conditions.
that you can control it that way. So maybe that's a good, to get us, at least to catch us before we have the zoning code assessment done. That's a way at least you can monitor it. It'd have to come through this body by special permit. But again, we'll need to work that up as an ordinance change.
So for today, this is just outdoor storage and mini warehouses, and I know
Yes.
what you're talking about. And you don't think an amendment for indoor storage is a good idea because?
The only thing I guess you get to think in the big picture, how is that building different than other retail buildings that could be saying, so if I've got I'll give you another example. What if I've got a boat sales operation and I have a Butler building that's no different than a climate storage building for selling boats? So I'm saying, you just got to think about, again, to your point, unintended consequences. What's the long term? If we do this, what does this mean for other structures as well?
Shouldn't they all be screened if we're putting them in the middle of neighborhoods or if we're trying to upgrade neighborhoods?
They
Shouldn't-
are in terms of, like, as you know, where commercial zoning abuts residential, you have to do screening regardless of what kind of building you're doing. We're trying to take care of those. I think what we heard loud and clear from folks is when you got stuff outside the building that's sitting out there on parking lots and you can see it and there's no screening of it, that problem we're solving. The other problem we're solving is what constitutes outdoor storage and not allowing junk vehicles to be part of that mix. So I agree, we still got some more work to do. All I'm saying is we might want to take a look at that as part of the overall zoning code assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. You do, Councilman? Okay, thank you. We have Councilman Gilbert.
John, don't leave.
Yeah, you got about a couple more.
Sorry,
a
sir,
couple
my
more.
apologies.
You answered the majority of it, but you mentioned about screening. Say you have boats that you sell and you got some in the building, some on outside. and it's right next door to a residential, they're supposed to have a screen around it
That's
now?
correct.
Well, I'll give you one to talk to about after the meeting.
That'll be Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas, I got one for you. What about going back to Bonnie Oaks and the junk?
Yes, sir.
Will this cover the junk on Bonnie Oaks for screening?
You wouldn't be allowed to use, if it's junk,
Uh,
you could not do outdoor screening of junk vehicles.
Well, not vehicles. They have trucks, air-conditioned trucks that they don't use half the time, and they got just junk everywhere,
Right.
in my opinion. Do
So
they
I-
need to screen this?
Yes, for sure. And I would say, and the next question we would want to ask is that even an appropriate use based on what we've defined as outdoor storage? So there's two actually questions we can't ask now. One, does it really meet the definition of outdoor storage? And two, is it being screened appropriately?
Okay. In the climate versus the garages.
Mm-hmm.
The garages storage has to be screened in.
Yep.
But it's just a big box building that says climate on it, do not have to be screened in at all.
Not currently with the current draft in front of you.
Okay, and you're gonna work on giving us information soon on the C2, if they get permission or not.
Special permit, change it
Right.
so it's not a by right. So that at least allows y'all to look at it, and it can't be just a by right anywhere.
I like that part. You know when you're gonna probably have that ready?
Planning and Zoning Committee is going to ask us to do it, and then we'll jump on it.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it. I'm through.
Thank you, Councilman Gilbert. We have Councilman Mitchell, and he'll be followed by Councilman Ledford. So, Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification. Where'd you go? Where you keep running away from us? He disappeared.
Man, we're gonna have to handcuff you up here today.
That's right.
John, just some clarification.
Yes.
Yeah, can we bring that dog back in here and get him on British? Just some clarification. If someone has a vehicle storage area, they've already built a fence, but they haven't screened it. In other words, will they have to go back and screen that fence, even though it's already existing and they've already doing this? Would they have to go
This does
back?
not change grandfather laws, to my understanding. I don't think it'd have to be a new, they have triggers based on the amount of investment. Yep. You can't do retroactive.
Okay, so that wouldn't be a planning and zoning. What would that be? To change that, to make them go back and put a
I would default to our city attorney on that one.
how would that work? If we
It would
created
work.
a new law to say,
Based upon a particular type of business, that your business operations would have to conform to these requirements. And you could do that as a business regulation under Chapter 11 in your code if you wanted to do it that way.
okay, I'd like to look into doing that. And I think I got a partner over there on the other side.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, John,
Chief, could you come and stand next to him, please?
Yes, sir.
come on now, John. Just to kind of wrap this up, so we're going to discuss in planning and zoning, I think, a couple of key things, and that is thank you for looking into the zoning changes, because we have line 17 in C2 zoning, which is wide open, allows these anywhere.
Yes.
I think it's definitely time we take a look at that, because I think the councilwoman is correct, and they are becoming of some concern in their numbers and also design. Next thing I would like to discuss in planning and zoning with my colleagues is the definition, because we have different types that are also starting to develop. We need to make sure that we identify them, and also the screening requirements. When it comes to the buildings that are internal, if you will, indoor, are they required to have at least a type B landscaping, John?
It's defined by zone, not by use, so for the zone, next to R1, you have to have a type B screening, yes.
Okay. That's why I just want to make sure that we had some sort of mechanism
Yes,
in
right.
there. Okay, very good. And then I would like to also echo the support of the looking into the Chapter 11 changes that we need to make as well. So I think you've got some good support up here to take a look at this, and we'll finalize our recommendations in planning and zoning.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Now you may sit down. Thank you, John. Oh, wait a minute. Oh,
I got you. I wasn't here for A. Can we go over that real quick?
go back to
A on plan?
A.
Yes. The gentleman wasn't here last week, and I think
Yes.
he's here now. I haven't seen.
This is that request for M2 on Shalford Road?
Right. And I want him to explain what he's actually gonna be doing.
Well, that would be at the public hearing tonight.
It will be permitted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I appreciate it.
All right, Councilman.
I do have an announcement, maybe. Might be
Okay,
helpful since I'm here. And
sure.
Just again, September 5th, we'll be having a series of public meetings on the airport district plan, so encourage you to come out for that. A lot of work went into that project. There'll be it's kind of like an open house. There'll be one at noon and one in the evening at the, I'm trying to remember the name of the, Shepherd Recreation Center, so Youth and Family Development Center. So encourage you to attend that.
Vice Chairman Henderson.
Thanks. John, are y'all still having the open house, I guess, for lack of a better word, for short-term vacation rental discussion Thursday
That
and Friday?
would be Mr. Beeland. As a yes.
Thursday and Friday?
Yes, sir, we are. It's going to be Thursday and Friday at the DRC in 1A from 3 to 5 each day.
Okay.
Anybody can come in, stop by, talk one-on-one with somebody about their concerns.
Okay, great.
3 to 5. Okay. Now you may sit down.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. No, okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, now we will move on to resolutions. 7G, please.
A resolution to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Gloria McKeldin to the Youth and Family Development Board.
See no lights. Now let's move on to 7H, please.
A resolution to confirm the mayor's appointment of Leandria Sandifer to the Chattanooga Area Regional Transportation Authority Board.
Okay. Seeing no lights. Okay, that ends this portion of our 3 o'clock. Say what now? Oh, okay. Man, your timing is really, really good. There is, don't sit down. There is no departmental report. So now, at this time, I would turn the chair over to Councilman Anthony Byrd for Economic and Community Development.
Don't do that. Don't. Motion to approve the minutes. Thank you guys so much. Welcome to Economic and Community Development Committee. We have some amazing people here from the chamber, and at this point in time, I will ask them to come up for their presentation. Who also gave an amazing event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Byrd, council members, thank you so much for having us. My name is Christy Gillenwater, and I have a few colleagues here too. But I do want to thank, I know several of you were at our annual meeting, so it was a major event for us today, so thank you so much for being there. So want to give a shout out first. We have Charles Wood, who is in the audience here for us for questions, when you guys get to the questions. Molly Blankenship as well, she leads our talent initiatives. I assume you all know Charles, leading our economic development strategies. Darian will be joining me here speaking to you. He leads our diversity inclusion work. And then we have Justin Granert. Hopefully you've all met Justin, just joined us as our new lead on public policy. And then, of course, next to him, Scotty. And Scotty helps us with local government. So thank you all for having us. It's an honor and privilege. First of all, we are deeply grateful to the council for being key partners in our economic development strategy, not only in the formation of our strategy, but the execution, because we obviously cannot do our work without both the city administration and all of you. So thank you. So we're here to talk to you about a few things. So thank you. We were asked to come in and talk about economic development as well as some of our diversity inclusion work. So wanted to start off with Velocity 2040. Hopefully you have all heard about that. And that was work that was a strong partnership with the city and many others in the community to really think about, you know, our journey over the next 20 years. As you all know, Chattanooga and Hamilton County has a very rich history of visioning here in our community. Starting back with Vision 2000, we've accomplished a great deal. And one of the things we had heard is, as we were contemplating a new economic development strategy, we really wanted to make sure that it aligned with a real robust and thoughtful 20-year strategy. So this 20-year strategy of Velocity 2040, as you'll see here, it's a little hard to see, but is really focused on people. So in the past, you know, and one of the things I always like to say to folks is we have an amazing city. We are all so fortunate to live here. And I think it was the leaders before us who were very intentional about creating a great place that now we all call home. And now this is really a vision around people. And so you'll see when we asked the public, and we had 4,816 people respond, they said, one, we want to make sure that students have what they need to learn. And really, when you look at these top 5, these were the top 5 responses that the public had to the survey. 4 of the top 5 are all around people and career pathway development, education, right? So as you look at that, you think of K-12 public education, you think of Chattanooga State, UTC, our higher ed partners, making sure everyone in the community has a chance to earn enough money to live. I think about the jobs that we create here, right, and that you partner with us on. So again, 4 of the 5. And of course, I always love to throw in the 5th, improve roads, sidewalks, and bridges, right? The usual infrastructure. But this next one here, you'll see then what came out of Velocity is a focus around 5 areas. And I'm going to, due to speed and time, wanting to respect your time today, focus on the thriving. So making sure every resident is thriving. The learning portion is also critical as we move forward in this discussion, but the thriving, that's the part that the chamber really wakes up thinking about every day. And obviously we have a number of partners who also think about that. And that's really around jobs. So what that led and guided our work towards Chattanooga Climbs. So Chattanooga Climbs is our 5-year economic and talent development strategy. So the implementation plan for the 20-year thriving piece of Velocity, okay? So take that thriving piece, 20-year vision, down to the next 5 years. This is what we want to accomplish. This phase, by the way, of work involved 90 residents, including surveys, including meetings. We had a 60-person steering committee that Charles led. And again, you see a lot of different groups who interfaced with our outside experts as we built this plan for the community. And I would argue this was a very intentional plan. It was very intentional around involving the public. It was very intentional about having it be built by more than 5, 10, 15 people. So this was basically our 4-phase process. One, as you're all aware, we went through a discovery phase, really looking at how we measure up against other communities, but also really studying our own data and being real with that data, because every community has challenges, right? Every single one of us. But we also have a lot of great components to our community, so really understanding that. Second, we really took a deep dive into target clusters. You know, where do we have significant industries in our community that are growing, where there is a workforce, where their market, that sector in either in our country or internationally is also growing. And then we looked at, from a talent development standpoint, what are we projected to produce in terms of talent and skill sets over the next 5 years, and where are the gaps? So really digging down into specific certifications, degrees, 4-year degree, 2-year degree programs in our region, and then looking at the employer community and projecting out what they're going to demand over the next 5 years. And then Molly and her team have really been leading conversations with our higher ed and K-12 partners around where some of those gaps are and how can we work together to really address those issues moving forward. And then for the strategy and implementation plan, which we had the draft plan in June, and we've been working on it. And one of the things that I really covet about this plan, it is a plan that really draws on a number of partner organizations to execute as well. I mean, ultimately, the Chamber helps to sell and promote this product that is Chattanooga, right? But we rely on a lot of partners in order to have a strong product to sell. And so this is the framework for Chattanooga Climbs. First of all, future ready, that we are thinking about our talent and making sure that our people have the skills for the new economy. Mobility for all, that's jobs for all, that every resident here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County has the opportunity to thrive. Gig City wins, that, as you all know, we're well known for our entrepreneurs. Today we celebrated our centennial companies. We have a lot of companies in Chattanooga and Hamilton County who have been here 100 years, whereas that next flight of 100-year-old companies, right? Those entrepreneurs who are starting up, and how can we support them in their journey? And then all over that inclusive economy with collaborative leaders. So future ready, these are just some of the highlights in terms of our priorities. And I will tell you, we have a very thoughtful set of metrics. And what you're seeing in the slide deck is about 250 pages condensed down into about 10 slides. So a lot of work and intentionality went into all of the reporting and data, but then the final 67-page of strategy is in four slides here. We have very thoughtful metrics around these as well in terms of number of jobs. We want to create the type of capital investment, looking at, again, target clusters, and really broadening the metrics that we've measured in the past to ones that we think will drive a stronger economy in the future. So again, you see here on Future Ready, again, we're excited about the work-based learning opportunities. We're excited about some of the conversations we've had about those who have been in our prison system and how we can re-engage them back into work here in our community. So a lot of just thriving, active discussions that are happening here, and how can we as a chamber be a partner in those discussions and lift those partners up. The Gestalt program is one we always love to talk about as an example of a real sound work-based learning partnership. We think about mobility for all. Again, think jobs for all. Again, making sure we have planned and ready sites. That's where you all come in as a key partner organization there. Obviously, the robust business retention and expansion focused on, again, industry specific. But, one of the things we're very cognizant of is not only do we want to keep our existing companies and our existing residents and make sure they're thriving, but also consider, what are our opportunities to bring in new companies to our community as well. And then on the Gig City side of it, as we talked about, again, making sure entrepreneurs continue to lead the way here, that we have access to capital, that really navigating our entrepreneurial ecosystem can become clearer for folks who want to start a business here or those who are on that vamp up journey already. And then how can we really continue to lift up R&D at UTC and at our other higher ed institutions so that we really continue to cultivate a spirit of innovation that we're so well known here. Think about the Innovation District and the city's leadership in that space. And the inclusive economy, collaborative leaders, again, making sure we have accountable, bold metrics, thinking about the type of diversity and inclusion work that's happening with area employers, how many people are going through those trainings, how many companies, have a value based on diversity and inclusion, and then making sure that we have leadership programs that really lift those up in the community. So again, overall, what we're trying to do, we all know Chattanooga and Hamilton County are on a really strong path. We've seen GDP growth. We've seen job growth. We had nearly 2,000 jobs reported last year that our team directly assisted with, and actually over 2,000 jobs, and we had $993 million in capital investment in the last 12 months. These are great numbers. These are bold numbers. We'd like to continue to be bold and move to bolder. So that's really our plan here over the next 5 years, is to be very strategic, to be very focused on what we're doing, to try to continue to grow jobs, and really with a lens of growing jobs for all of our community, and in pockets of our community who haven't seen that prosperity. We're very intentional about that as we move forward in the next 5 years. So with that, I'll punt over to Darian, who will talk about some of the work he has been leading in the diversity and inclusion space that we're really proud of. Darian?
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Council. I've been in this role 9 months, and honestly, at the beginning of those 9 months, I had a complete head of black hair. Now, I've been in 9 months, now we're getting work done. But with that being said, Christy did touch on some of the work that we're doing now. So coming into the position, we decided to kind of group the work together in 3 large buckets, and that's basically workplace, workforce, and marketplace. So what you see right now in front of you is one of the workplace efforts in the Diversified 2019. The goal is to educate and equip employers to foster more diverse and inclusive 21st century workplaces. Within the summit, there was a lot of knowledge, a lot of learning. We had 9 very impactful breakout sessions covering everything from biases to disabilities. We feel that in years past, we've done the marketplace for Diversify. We decided to change it to a summit after doing the research and realizing that Chattanoogans need to be more inclusive to work together. And that's coming from the perspective of a customer, and that's coming from a coworker. So all of that helps our business growth. So with Diversify, we had 155 participants, like I said, 9 impactful breakout sessions. The luncheon itself, 700 attendees. Great discussion from the stage with Mrs. Deborah Elam. She did 30 years at General Electric, 18 years she was the chief diversity officer. She came into town and gave us a great experience of her knowledge and things she's been involved with GE, and she gave us some great information. The second bucket would be workforce. We've started a couple of great initiatives, the first being the Innovation Ecosystem Tours. That's when we take people who want to be engaged, educators, business people, leaders in the community, and we have an all-day tour that takes them from the North Shore and the incubator. Mayor Coppinger will speak to them. Some of my colleagues, Charles, Christy, and Molly, will speak with them as well. We'll give them a tour of the incubator, and then we'll transition the tour over to Miller Park. People from Causeway will come speak, the Urban League. And on the last leg of the tour, we'll go over to the Edney Building. Mary Burke will come, Marcus Shaw from CoLab, and other entrepreneurs will come pour into this group of people about ways they can be connected with the resources of the Innovation District. One of the other events that we've had, it's pretty new, the Women's Networking Breakfast Series. We did our very first one, July the 10th, over at the incubator. We had 60 attendees, 26 stakeholders. Lots of people wanted to come to this event. The next one is coming up November the 13th. We're going to do it in conjunction with one of our other partners, CWLI, and it'll be the Unity Breakfast. Okay, marketplace. We are trying our best to get our small business owners, especially contractors, involved for opportunities. We've had 2 so far this year. We had a how to bid on contracts early in February, and we also had a partnership with the MNAA, the Metropolitan Nashville Airport Authority, and they had a contract coming through on a $1.2 billion new airport in Nashville. I know you guys may have heard about it, but the first leg of the airport was $100 million. The parking deck and the administration offices. We only had 14 people to show up for that event. It would be great to be able to get more minority contractors involved in that type of work. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do. One other thing that we're working on right now, we in talks with 2 property developers here in Chattanooga to extend our incubator program. Soon we will be able to incubate more businesses off chamber properties, and so we'd be happy to bring that to you soon as well. Any questions? Oh, Thank you.
Hold on one second, Darren. I think we have Councilman Gilbert.
Yes.
You said that you have, how many contractors that showed up to your event? How many African American?
Oh, only one African American.
Okay. A lot of these guys are frustrated. You should know that by now, because do y'all have a system set up where their issues is the payroll? For an example, the 90 days is not going to help them any. Do y'all have something set up as a chamber to intervene with that 90 days so that they can be successful? They can do the work, do fantastic work, but to cover every week, their subs get paid every Friday. And to make payroll and you don't have that money that you done worked on already into the kid, that's one of their issues and concerns. Do you have something set up for that?
We don't have anything set up currently, but we have been in talk with the TSBDC to find out more ways. Some businesses can kind of hold on to some capital and be able to use it for those things.
The other problem they have is bonding, bond money, because some of these bonds is $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, and they don't have that resource. They can do the job, can do a very good job, but they don't have the resource. And I think we've been talking about this for a long while, for its chamber, whatever, and it hasn't happened. I mean, let's look at the problems. Can we solve the problem instead of saying we have all these programs, but we really don't have anything that's going to really, really help them to get the contracts. I'm looking for something like that. That's my challenge to you and whoever else in the chamber, because that is the issue. They've been saying this for years, but no one has heard them. So they get kind of tired of coming to programs or to meetings and nothing happens.
Well, I can say this, Councilman. This is a new day, and I'm willing to fight hard for all of our businesses, definitely.
So
I will be working on that.
So what's your deadline to start getting this in practice? For is it a year? Is it 6 months?
I'll just take it back to the team, and we'll come up with a definite plan for it.
You come back to us and let us know about it?
Yeah, we will. Yes.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Darren. Seeing no more questions.
Just any other questions, just checking in for any of us?
Okay.
Okay.
Councilman Leffert.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Christy.
Hi.
So I'm interested, when I saw the working on accessibility to the workplace as part of the plan, can you explain to me, and I see Lisa's in the audience too, and can you explain to me what that process is, the communication process, when you're trying to recruit a particular business to a certain area? At what level is CARTA considered, or that communication chain starts?
I'll defer to Charles a bit on that one since he leads our work in that space.
Afternoon, Council. I would say typically when we have companies that we start working with, one of the things that they will bring to the forefront as they're going through a site selection search is transportation capacity in the community. So we have some companies that specifically ask, we only want to look at sites that are on a bus line. We don't want to look at anything that doesn't have that access. And so usually it's a company-driven decision. But I would say, and I think maybe some of what you saw in this plan is being a little bit more thoughtful around how we work to embed companies into areas where transportation isn't a barrier. And so as we went through the research on the discovery phase of this plan, one of the things that we found out, which was a surprising number to a lot of people, is 10% of the households in Hamilton County do not have access to a car. And so effectively, if you think about that, 1 in 10 households, not people, has no access to a car. And so if you look at issues around getting to workforce training programs just to then go get the skills they need for a job and then being able to get the skill, it's a huge barrier. And so as we look at where we place businesses, as we talk to companies, especially that we think are going to be able to hire from the community that doesn't have that access, we're going to be much more intentional around where we try to get companies to consider. Now, you have to have a building and you have to have a place for them to go, right, for that to work. But it's a big barrier. And really, I think, I understood a good bit of the data around education attainment in the market, but that was a surprise for us.
Thank you, Charles. May I? So I'm trying to figure out, because I want to understand the challenge or the approach to the challenge of accessibility craved areas, how are we addressing enticing businesses to those locations, knowing what that criteria is on the forefront? How is the chamber in this plan addressing that? I mean, that, to me, that's a big hurdle, and it's been a big hurdle forever. So I'm real curious because I see the areas, I drive through them, and I'm like, man, if we could just get this, if we could just get that, we would have a grocery store, we would have this. But then I'm real curious to know in the plan where this is at what level this is taking place.
So for us, we're looking for companies and projects that we can basically embed into neighborhoods where there's going to be, basically to eliminate as many barriers as possible to getting employment at those companies, and then also identify the same thing on a workforce training capacity. So that's part of the plan. I would say what the city has done already in investing in Tubman is a good example of that. And I think there's other opportunities in Alton Park and Brainerd and other places like that where there is transportation access, but it's a matter of creating sites, finding sites, buildings, and then also marketing those to companies that have an interest in tapping that workforce. Because frankly, we do have lots of companies that say, I want to be an industrial park, I want it to be clean and green, which is great, and we worked extensively with Lisa and her team on getting a Carter route out to Enterprise South, so that we're starting to create better linkages there, but there's a lot more that has to be done. And I know Lisa and her team are going through kind of a strategy process right now on kind of running the routes and looking at where they are and how they better link to larger portions of the population. And it's about, and you can describe this better than I can, but it's basically about connecting riders with jobs and training.
Very good. Well, I thank you for that focus. I thank you too, Lisa, and your team, because I know that that's a critical component to moving us forward and as a city as a whole. And that's something and we've talked about since I've been in this office day one quite extensively. So thank you both for your efforts and work on that. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, sir. Two things. When the Mayor's Council for Women did research on what the barriers were for women, who are the majority of the single-parent heads of household, the two barriers were transportation and affordable quality daycare. And that still seems to be the problem. Lisa was part of the study with the transportation. So Charles, you may have answered the one question I was going to ask, and that is, even though, because I know we're short of land, so to embed in a neighborhood is one thing, of course, but there's a land shortage. You and I have discussed that. The other is really rethinking, which I think Lisa and her team are doing, to figure out how to get transportation for people who don't want to move. I love the 20-minute ride, no more than 20-minute ride, because that makes sense. The other is affordable quality daycare. Are you looking at that at all?
Okay, so great question. First of all, kudos to Lisa and her team. I mean, they are critical partners of ours, and quality and thoughtful transit, public transportation is so critical to this plan and the execution. That's where I mentioned we rely on so many other partners because our ecosystem is really strong and needs to continue to be robust. So I will also say, as you saw in this plan, going back to Councilman Ledford's point and yours as well, around brownfield redevelopment. So there is a specific call out to look at not only greenfield sites, but very intently at brownfield sites and look at what needs to be done to activate these sites, reactivate these sites. So that's one thing. On the child care piece, Molly, of course, also leads Chattanooga 2.0. And so that's really in the Chattanooga 2.0 under the learning part, being the smartest city in the South, and that vision piece. The cradle through career is absolutely critical. And what I love about quality childcare is not only is it helping us for future talent pipeline, but to your point, also helping our existing workforce. And so there is still a very key focus on that, and I'll let Molly talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you all.
Good afternoon.
A couple of things just to build on what Christy mentioned. Certainly, I have the privilege of sitting in both places, so do have the 2.0 lens. And there is some really interesting work happening through the Early Matters Coalition right now, focused specifically on access to high-quality early childhood. And I think one of the biggest learnings that we have found since the beginning days of Chattanooga 2.0 is that it's not enough just to expand seats, that you have to make sure that they are those high-quality and affordable seats for all people. And so some of the work that's coming out of that group right now, and we are in conversations with funders and partners about it, is exclusively focused, and this is in partnership with the Mayor's Office for Early Learning, is exclusively focused on that specific issue and how we can create long-term change to make an impact there. The other thing that I would mention too, just from the Chamber's perspective, one of the elements of our strategic plan around talent development is to equip employers with best practices on how they play into these solutions and how they help us create solutions. And so one of the ways that we'll do that is help them explore models like that where employers can help provide some of those solutions to their workforce, childcare and other services and that sort of thing. And Charles just gave me a tip, and so thank you. Launch Chattanooga also has a program right now where they're helping employers figure out how they are going to provide childcare to people in the community. So we're involved in working with partners in those spaces as well.
Thank you. They're
Sure.
inextricably tied. When we
Absolutely.
did our study, a single mom who had to take a child to daycare and had to get to work, and Lisa knows this too, so it's good to have a part of this. And it took 3 hours because daycares, for some reason, aren't allowed to pick up and deliver, which is okay. But I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, I mean, there's some things policy-wise that we might work on as well to make things easier. People aren't apologists. These issues, these two issues alone are really big. So
Agreed.
any help that you can give, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're focused there and appreciate it.
That's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Gilbert.
I agree 100% with Councilwoman Burrs. That is the major problem with my employees like I employ. Transportation, but child daycare, that's the issue. On child daycare, even the timing of they cannot bring the kids too early, they can't bring them too late. That's the issue also. I know. So, but do you actually talk to new companies about the issue that we just mentioned so they can encourage them to start looking at daycare as they come to the city of Chattanooga?
So one of the things we're going to be really intentional about, and Charles obviously always looks at, is that kind of the understanding the company has around our culture and those components of a company that we really want to continue to foster here. And those are companies that think about these kinds of components. What kind of access to childcare will our staff have? How can we give back and be engaged in the community? How are we being mindful about transportation, as you heard him say? So that is absolutely part of the conversation.
And I'd add, with unemployment kind of bouncing around 3%, both with our existing companies as well as with new companies that are coming in, I would tell you when we're working with a new company, we kind of try and give them a cheat sheet, right? So we sell them on Chattanooga, you can be successful here, but one of the things we try and help them with is we want to give them pointers before they have their HR teams even on the ground of here's how you can successfully recruit employees. And these are some of the barriers you're gonna come across, and here's ways to kind of overcome those barriers. So the bus route's a good example, things like childcare, things about how they set up their shifts, things about how they train their supervisors for their production workers. So we kind of give them a laundry list of things that will help them be very competitive in the market for hiring. That's one of several things we try and coach them on coming into the market. And that gives them the ability to be successful when they land, because otherwise, frankly, it gets very uncomfortable for us if they make a decision, they locate, and then they're not able to recruit. And so we try and give them as much as we can. They do survey their employees. Many of the existing companies, HomeServe did this. When they expanded out on Lee Highway, they surveyed their employees to get an understanding of what the critical needs were, and they actually came back with daycare was a limited issue for them as they looked at it, because most of their employees had kids that were already in school. And so they were past that point, I guess from a demographic perspective, they were past the point of needing that as a primary issue, and to be able to support a dozen or so employees with a daycare didn't make sense. But they had some other things that they did put in place. So just, it depends on the company, it depends on their workforce, but we do try and prep them ahead of time as they're coming in.
And out of the 2,000 jobs for, was it last year or this year? How many of these jobs do they still work there?
Well, so those have been announced. They have not necessarily been filled. I'll give you an example. So a big number came out of Arrive Logistics announcement that happened this spring. So they're in process of defining what their real estate solution is going to be and where they're going to go. But they're staffing up as they go, as an example. So that's what's been announced. But there's a process for them to get to the point where they can actually put the employees in the seats. And that was I will tell you, that was a full court press to get that company here. That involved partners at FreightWaves and at Reliance, which is another logistics company, kind of in recruiting, getting their CEO and kind of recruiting them into Chattanooga. So it takes a while to develop out, but they've done pretty well at hiring from that perspective.
So the actual 2,000 job has not actually happened yet.
They've been announced, and they're in process of getting hired, would be what I would tell you. Because if they announce, it takes more than a year typically for those companies to staff up over time.
Do you ever track that after announcing and then after they?
We do.
And then, okay. And do you do work with Carter also for as new companies coming in?
We do, yes, sir.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you. I guess Mr. Woods and the Chamber, thank you all for this great presentation. I just wanted to say one thing before you go. Something that bothers me a lot, and I like to have a conversation sometime with you, D. It doesn't have, Darren. Doesn't have to be today. But I think child daycare, transportation, child support, convicted felons, racism, these things. I'm 44 years old. These have been a problem in our society for the longest. This have always been something that we've talked about, but I still think it's another element that we're missing that we definitely, as a city, need to address. What that is, I don't know right now. But it's another element, because these things, if this was just such a big problem, Darren, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting. Councilwoman Coonrod wouldn't be where she is. I wouldn't be where I'm at. You know, it's certain things that have played a part in our lives, and I think it's some other things that we definitely need to address. But thank you so much for your presentation. It was awesome.
Thank you for having us. We welcome those conversations, and thank you, Chairman Oglesby, for asking us to be here today. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay. Hold on, Ms. Demetrius, Councilwoman Coonrod.
You guys are doing an excellent job on addressing systemic issues. Will it happen overnight that it'll be addressed? Will it change overnight? No, because we're in the South. And we already know what that means. It's a bigger picture. And it's just once we as a city or as a county get ready to actually plow through those barriers and actually have the changes that we're looking for, that's when we're gonna see the changes. But I think some of the questions that have been asked, I don't believe that it's actually a chamber issue. We can holistically address these problems, but we're not in the business of keeping our people handicapped, right? So we're gonna provide them with the tools and the resources, but once we do that, it's up to that individual, right, to be empowered to make the steps to the next level, because we can continue to throw these things at them and say, we could say free daycare, but is that gonna alleviate the problem? Is that actually helping the person? We can say Carter can provide free bus passes to get out the Volkswagen, but will that alleviate the problem? So I think we need to address the root causes and get people into, you know, on a level field where they actually can compete, and we gotta stop handicapping our people that we serve. You guys do a great job. Thank you so much for addressing those systemic issues to move our city forward. And it's hard, it's a battle, we get that. But it's not fair for us to just dump all that work and say it's the chamber's job to address those issues. We as individuals gotta be willing to take that step as well. Thank you.
Well said, Councilwoman. All right, seeing no more questions, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. All right, so now we're going to go to resolutions 7A.
A resolution declaring surplus of property located at 4500 North Access Road, further identified as tax map number 119HA001.04, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a donation agreement in substantially the form attached and any related documents between the McCamey Animal Center and the City of Chattanooga for the donation of the property, inclusive of reversionary language in the deed that should the property cease to be used for the stated purpose, it shall revert back to the City of Chattanooga.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, 7B.
A resolution transferring $20,000 from Economic and Community Development Funds to the Industrial Development Board for implementation of economic development construction mitigation grants for the Chattanooga Department of Transportation's Patton Parkway construction project.
7C.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to enter into an agreement in substantially the form attached with Viewpoint Government Solutions for Viewpoint Cloud Software in the amount of $271,470 for 1 year, with the option to renew for up to 2 additional 1-year terms for a total of 3 years.
7D.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to enter into an agreement for the purchase, creation, and installation of artwork for the Wieland Foundry Trailhead with the artist Mark Forns, the Very Many LLC, in the amount of $370,750.
7E.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to accept a grant to support the Economic Mobility Planning Project from the Benwood Foundation in the amount of $50,000 and the Community Foundation of Greater Chattanooga in the amount of $50,000 for a total amount of $100,000.
7F.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to execute a professional services contract with MDC Incorporated for consulting services related to the Economic Mobility Planning Project to be paid from the Economic Development Fund for an amount not to exceed $160,000.
Seeing no questions, we're going to move on to next week, Tuesday, August the 27th, 2019, resolutions 7A.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a second agreement to exercise option to renew with Chattanooga Goodwill Industries Incorporated in substantially the form attached for a portion of the property located at 1815 East Main Street, tax map number 156BD009 for an additional term of 1 year at the rate of $1 per year for the continued operation of programs through the Chattanooga Furniture Bank.
7B.
A resolution authorizing the Department of Economic and Community Development Codes Division to renew agreements with Grass Buster Lawn Maintenance and AB Property Preservation for property abatement services for the first of 2 optional renewal terms from October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020 for an amount not to exceed $300,000.
7C.
A resolution authorizing the transfer of funds and donations to support public art to the city from the Community Foundation relative to resolution number 27449 in the amount of $51,720.
All right, seeing no questions, that will adjourn the Economic and Community Development Committee meeting, and now we will turn it over to the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, sir. We'll call to order the Public Safety Committee. Have a motion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, says nay. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, we only have one item on committee, so let's go ahead and read that, and then we'll move into a presentation with the chief.
A resolution authorizing the Chattanooga Police Department, along with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, to apply for the fiscal year 2019 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program, which runs from October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2022, through the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs for an amount of $92,576 for the Chattanooga Police Department, for an amount of $41,592 for the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, for a total amount of $134,168.
Councilman Gilbert.
Do we know what the money can be spent on? Can you tell us, Chief, what this grant is gonna be spent on?
For the most part, sir. We are still in deliberations over, whenever we have a JAG grant proposal, all the commands within the department bring, for lack of a better term, their Christmas lists. For the majority of what we've looked at spending this on, we're gonna buy, I think, another golf cart or two, so we can continue to have those low-impact community engagement models, so we can get out there and do those non-traditional patrols, but outside of the downtown area. There was some training listed. I could get you the list, but I don't have it with me right now. But it's typically things that we don't purchase out of our general operating or capital budget, sir.
All right, thank you.
No, I don't believe we're purchasing any weapons or anything like that, if that's a concern from anybody.
No,
Unless we can.
We give you enough money for that.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
All right, seeing no further questions, Chief, while you're up. So a number of people have brought up, and then you called me yourself and asked to give the council an update on the Police Advisory Committee and the class for the academy that they'd be attending. So if you don't mind, would you give us kind of an update on what your schedule looks like and when we can expect the new members of this committee to be kind of thrown into the academy and how you see that moving forward, sir?
Yes, sir. The Citizens Police Academy, the next one is set to start September 12th. We have 9 slots set aside reserved for each one of your representatives in that Citizens Police Academy. It's going to put the total attendance in that class between 25 and 30, which is about our typical attendance. So it would not be just the individuals that you are selecting, but it would also be other members of our community, which we think creates a very healthy dialogue and experience for everyone involved. Starting now, or whenever the council chooses to, if you can provide me a list of your representatives and you're ready to proceed, I would like to, one, get their applications into the Citizens Police Academy, because there are just certain qualifiers and paperwork we have to do in order to be ready for their attendance. But then also we can start to get their ride-along scheduled. And as we discussed during the formation of the PARC, I'd like for each one to do at least 3 ride-alongs in different parts of the city in different shifts, so they can get a different experience for how the police department works throughout. So we could begin to schedule those at any time, as soon as we're able to get the applications in and get the paperwork processed. The other 2 components is we were going to schedule a particular number of hours for the individuals to go into our de-escalation response to resistance simulator that is at our range. We had been waiting on a central processing unit to come in from the manufacturer, and that came in last week. So it has now been installed. We're working that in and should be up and running if it's not already. So we could also begin to work in some of those hours starting as soon as possible as well, so we can work to get ahead of the curve as quickly as possible. And then the only other component block that we had discussed relative to education and training for the members was about a 2-hour block, which would be led by me with the entire committee, to just go over the internal affairs process, how it works, the same information and discussions that I've had with all of you in various settings. So we can go over policies, procedures. I would ask the city attorney to accompany for part of that, so we can go over just employment law, Garrity, Loudermill, all those things that we're required to adhere to within government employment. And that would be about a 2-hour block, and we could schedule that either during the Citizens Police Academy, at its conclusion, and when all the members are available. So it would be more of a scheduling logistic at that point, Chairman.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll take a couple questions and we can add to that if need be. Councilman Gilbert?
I think Nicole can provide you with the information you're searching for all the candidates.
Yes.
She can give them to you. The other thing is, I appreciate that you're going to do this with them and talk to them, explain to them the situation, and also with our lawyer. Do you know a time frame of you talking to them?
Of when I would hold that sit
Right,
down?
right.
I mean, I could do it at any time, sir. I think it's going to be more dependent upon when the availability of all of those members matches my calendar. We just figure out when we can get a 2-hour block arranged. And I can do it in the morning, afternoon, evening, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, I'll make my calendar as open as I can to work around 8 to 9 other members' calendars as well, sir.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you. So Chief, you haven't gotten the list yet of all of our people?
No, ma'am.
Well, okay. We were working under the impression that you had gotten the names. So, okay. So they haven't received a letter from you either?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That's on our plate. That's our fault. I apologize for that. You should have been knowing all along who they were. How do you see this interfacing, if at all, with the committee you already had?
It would actually, more than likely, ma'am, it would dissolve the committee we already have.
Dissolve the
I
committee?
would see it as a redundant measure of what the Administrative Review Committee
Okay.
already supplies. This would simply, where the ARC, the Administrative Review Committee, currently functions in the process, that would simply move out of the way, and the PARC would step into the same injection point within the review process. And then they would also fulfill the desire that we have for a community review of our internal affairs investigations as well.
Okay. So I'm a bit at a loss as to why those names haven't been forwarded to the chief so that he would see some of them have been there since May, April. I need some help there.
I don't know that anybody up here is going to have an answer for you, Councilwoman, but we'll find out.
Huh?
I'll look into it after we finish
Please.
the 3 o'clock meeting.
Yeah, because Russell, I thought they'd been, my apologies, Chief, because at least my candidate was wondering why he hadn't heard anything, and my apologies to you. You should have had those names. You should have seen their resumes. They're quite a good and varied group. So I look forward to good things from this group to meet your needs. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Kind of echo my colleague. I thought you had those too. So again, sorry about that. My question was rooted in the activities. If they've already been through the police academy, are you trying to work them together as a whole group to build kind of a, I don't want to say unity because you want individual opinions and perspectives, but or are you curtailing each individual to kind of go their own path, but under the requirements that you set?
No, sir. I think since this is an initial model, I think every one of the members should attend all of the same training. Again, one, to maybe establish some type of an esprit within themselves, but also if an individual may have already attended Citizens Police Academy, when? What information was presented? What chief was chief then? What was the leadership? What was the current sections of policy that they might have had an exposure to at the time they went to a CPA? I would prefer that they all attend together to help them maybe bond as a committee, but also so that the information they all receive is exactly the same as we move forward through the educational process.
Okay. My appointee was 2019-1, came through with me, so the last one. Just,
Then we may get them to teach part of it if it's that fresh in their mind, if that's okay with them.
Maybe so, okay. So yeah, I'm surprised too and hope to hear some answers on that. So thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Chief.
Hello, sir.
How you doing? One question, and it kind of goes off Councilman Gilbert's question. In my mind, of course, you'll make this decision, but in my mind, it almost seems like your sit-down session should happen after the academy and some other things, and there might be some questions that they might not have of you before they go through that academy and things like that. So it seems like that ought to be, to me, ought to be maybe towards the closing of their training.
I would prefer it would be, or even after their graduation, but I also know that the council is timeline sensitive, so whatever accommodations we can make, willing to do that. But I do believe the perfect model is for these things to be sequential. They need to build upon one another, and if it becomes right along and then 2 weeks of a Citizens Police Academy where you're starting to learn and understand, and then all of a sudden you do 30 minutes in a use of force response to resistance simulator, it could be a little disconcerting. So the perfect model is begin the Citizens Police Academy. Ride-alongs during the Citizens Police Academy are perfect because it will generate questions and thoughts that they can then bring into the CPA experience. And then we work through the use of force response to resistance simulator, and then mine and the city attorney's kind of educational and awareness component right at the tail end when they've had all of this other experience and education to build upon, sir, if that makes sense.
I can just speak for myself, but that sounds great to me. Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you,
sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Councilman Gilbert, another question?
Yes, going back to what we just got through talking about, I think earlier on the council saying that, that you should have got the application a long time ago. I think we had decision-making that the chair should send the letters out to the people, which I think the chair already did that, to the volunteers. But going back to what we just said, I think that's a good point. I mentioned to you last time that we need a person, an administrative assistant, to do things like that, to make sure that they have letters and make sure that chief knows and make sure our lawyer knows. And I mentioned to you then that, you know, we need to look at Karen, hopefully can do that, because the, she ain't here, I can see it. Oh, she's in the back, sorry about that. That she could, or someone could, maybe get a 6% increase to actually do that particular job based off the analyst position, because we decided on from the past that we didn't want to pay for the lawyer and went back to the analyst. You recall that, right? I see Chip shaking his head a little bit. So we did make a decision quickly that, because I would like for that person to go to their same academy so that they'll know what's going on and things of that nature. So do we need to make a decision now, or do we want to make a decision next week on how we're going to do that? Do I need to bring Beverly in to show you the difference? I already gave the chair, well, she's not here, I already gave him the job descriptions on the analyst and also on Karen and also on Nicole. So how do you want to push forward with this? Because this will eliminate some of the communication.
Sure. Councilman, I'd say you get with the chair and try to schedule that. This is not for this committee, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, I think you find that part, that will help out quite a bit, correct?
To have a single point of contact for information,
Yes.
sir? Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Chief, I don't have any more lights up here. I will say this, I do believe the final appointees to this committee will be made this evening. So you will have a full slate, so you'll be getting those all at the same time, hopefully. And then you mentioned sending out, well, I think Councilwoman Burrs asked, or stated you have not communicated with them because you didn't know. As soon as you receive that slate of all 9, is that something you also see your office reaching out, giving them all this detail that we've just discussed here, welcoming them, letting them know they can contact whomever? As far as your side of things go, is that kind of the next step that you would envision communicating with this group?
Yes, sir. And if I could set it up the best way, I actually would like to just do a 30-minute meet and greet where we can shake each other's hands and get to know one another is how I would perfectly envision the kickoff. If schedules become too troublesome for that, then yes, a written correspondence will go to each one of those members as well.
And do you have somebody that can schedule that with these 9 members?
Yes.
That also has your calendar, and so you'll take care of that from there?
Correct.
All right, I just want to make sure, so we don't drop any more balls up here with getting this moving. All right, thank you, Chief. So, oh, hold on, Councilman Gilbert.
Chair, this is a question for you. Can we go ahead and set up something that we can make the discussion if we're going to do this or not with the assistant so that we can keep it moving? Because September 12th is right around the corner. So can we talk about this
I'd like to do it next Tuesday.
next Tuesday?
Yeah.
I appreciate
That's good
that.
for you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Chief, you have anything else for us, sir?
Just want to make sure I don't pull a John. Can I leave and sit down, or you're going to call me? Where's he at?
We all
I had to get even with it.
we all know you're a little more skilled at standing at the podium, Chief.
I'll be good.
We know John's still working on it, but he's good. All right, I see no further lights. Chief, thank you very much. We'll get you that information. And if there are no further questions, we will adjourn to the Public Works and Transportation Committee with Councilman Mitchell.
Need approval of the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you. We're going to start with Public Works. Mr. Payne, I believe you're handling the show today? Yes, sir. Great. Looks like we've got a couple of resolutions for today. Would you please start with 7I?
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 2 for J&J Contractors Incorporated of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number Y 15008-201, the new Avondale YFD Center, to retain the current available contingency amount for an increased amount of $887,710 for a revised contract amount of $5,840,249.
Council, did we have this conversation about this already, about this particular resolution?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions then? All right, please read J.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into blanket contracts for year 3 of a 3-year term to supply electrical services to citywide facilities with the reference contractors: Admin Electric Incorporated, Triad Electrical Contractors, and Tri-State Electrical Contractors, LLC, for the renewal of 1-year blanket contracts for electrical services estimated at $1 million total annually for all 3 electrical contractors for use by all departments.
I see no lights. Okay, here, next week's resolutions. Here's where it gets interesting. Please read 7F.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number E16006-202 to Tredibet Environmental Services, former Lupton City Mill Asbestos Abatement Project, in the amount of $245,150, with a contingency amount of $24,500 for a total amount of $269,650.
All right, council, as I said something a little earlier, this was added today at noon, which doesn't exactly meet our rules of how we do things. But I would like, you know, and we can make the decision on whether to add it or not. I would ask that we do, even though I've been quite a stickler for the rules, so I could totally understand if you'd like to tell me no today. Do we want to let Bill explain the project and then go to your questions, or do you want to be heard right now? Okay. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is related to the Lupton Mill project. The council has previously authorized the award of the cleanup over there at the former mill, which had come to the city via back tax property. But in the process of getting that contract started, we identified some additional asbestos that was not known to be on the site at the time that we had prepared the initial scope, and it was unknown to TDEC at the time that we had been preparing everything. So as a result of that, we were unable to come to an agreeable set of scope and fee with the contractor that's doing the overall cleanup, and so we put out to bid a separate set of construction documents for the asbestos abatement, and that's what this contract is for you today. So this is work that would go in and take place at the site to abate the asbestos that's been found and determined to be on the site, and then once that happens, then we will be able to release Wright Brothers to go back and finish the originally scoped and bid work.
Okay. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my question in the fact that it didn't follow our normal procedure, my question would be, is there some type of urgency, Bill, that we need to get this addressed next week as opposed to following our normal rules of process? And you know, we talked about it a little bit at our 1:30 meeting or whatever. I'm not even sure how it got on the agenda, Mr. Chair. I mean, I don't know that anybody from this council asked for it to be put on, did they?
Not that I'm aware of. Wait, Ms. Sullivan, do you want to jump in here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had it on our regular process. We had it on the 3-week for today, and we were trying to move this because this project has taken so many months now, and we were trying to delete as many weeks as possible. So just in the attempt to move the project along a little faster, our Administrator of Public Works, Mr. Holland, called Councilman Mitchell and asked it being his district and it being in this committee, asked if he would like for us to move it up, and he said that he would bring it to committee. We had committee today and ask y'all's thoughts. So that's where we are.
So that got it put on by just, well, I guess I'll go back to my question. Is it going to hold up the work or the contracts? Well, obviously it'll hold up the contracts, but I guess I'm looking for a sense of urgency here. If we're going to sort of abandon our rules, I feel like it ought to be for a reason of urgency.
I'm
So
going to
I'm asking,
defer
is
to
there
Bill
a
on
sense
that.
or a
Right.
reason of urgency in abandoning our rules?
Absolutely.
I think our response, I mean, certainly we know that the schedule and just the length of this project in and of itself has been urgent. We do know, however, that there is a process that needs to be followed, and we're prepared for that to happen. Certainly, the delay, as you mentioned, just delays being able to complete that cleanup work, I think. But as far as if this were to follow the existing process, then we just have to continue to keep those weeks built into the overall completion date.
Mr. Chair, if you're asking my personal opinion, I'd rather wait till the 3rd and let this follow the process that we normally follow, just so that we keep urgency or urgent matters in priority in placing them on our agenda like this.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mara, it sounds like the process that was followed on this item that's really in question, you guys did exactly as you're supposed to do, which is reach out to the council member over the committee as well as the council member whose district is represented, whom my understanding is responded with, let me bring it to council and see if they're okay with it.
Yes.
I think somebody else needs to address exactly how it got on the agenda without anybody agreeing or authorizing it to get on the agenda, and I certainly hope that type of thing ceases, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
That said, I do believe I also heard Councilman Mitchell say that he would very much appreciate if we can get this moved along as quickly as possible, and that would be something that he would appreciate considering how long this has taken. So while I agree wholeheartedly with Councilman Henderson following rules, I am 100% supportive of Councilman Mitchell's request that we put this on sooner for something that is taking so long to get here, and set aside the fact that it got on the agenda as it shouldn't have as a separate issue. Had this not be on the agenda right now and Councilman Mitchell said, hey, we have an item, I'd really like it on for the 1 week, I would support him in that anyway. So I'm trying to separate the two. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have to add.
Fascinating. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have to echo both of my colleagues a little bit. I'm a little perplexed. I'm a little perplexed as to why and how things just keep showing up. We have Councilwoman Burrs making, in strategic planning questions, is this our agenda or somebody else's agenda? So, council, pay attention. That's all I'm going to say about that. Number two, I do agree with Councilman Smith, and that is, I remember this project along with other projects or / quote unquote promises that were made a couple years ago, and it's nice to see something finally happening on those promises in somebody's district. But I will also be in support of moving this along in District 2 because I think it's important to the people who are made promises. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of, Councilperson Burrs.
Thank you. I think the issues of poor process, again, have been addressed, but I still didn't get an answer. Is this exigent circumstances?
There's not been any change in the conditions of that site since before it even became the city's ownership. So there's not been any change that.
So my colleague asked, is this urgent to be done? And I sort of heard two answers from you. I support what's going on there, and I heard very clearly what Councilman Mitchell said. However, if we voted on this are we holding up the world by not voting on this next week if we don't? I still don't have that answer.
Well, what I was attempting to state a few moments ago is we understand that time is of the essence, both from the neighborhood's position, from the council's position as well. We had not planned for this to have necessarily gotten moved up, but if the opportunity is there and it can be moved up, then yes, we would certainly take advantage of those additional weeks.
All right, so here's my question again.
Okay.
So if we vote on this next week,
Mhm.
then the next day they can start, or does the time matter? I know the whole project, it does.
Well, time always matters. I mean,
Come on, Bill.
Well, I understand, but I apologize, but you ask a question and I have responded.
Will they
with
be
an
ready
answer.
to start Wednesday if we vote on it Tuesday?
Contracts would not be signed that soon, but we cannot start the contract execution process until council has awarded. So that time is currently holding and waiting on
How long is the contract execution process take?
It typically takes about 2 weeks because the contractor has to submit bonds, insurance, documents have to be signed and routed by multiple
So if
parties,
we say, if we go forward Tuesday, then Wednesday you will start executing the contract? Or, in other words, does the week matter? Does the week difference matter?
Certainly, in everything that we do, is as soon as council takes an action, we begin immediately the next day taking action with all of the necessary next steps that happen. So, and if it's acted on next week, or if it's acted on in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, we will begin the day after the vote to begin those things. I think the only question in our mind is, just at this point, when that vote occurs, then we will.
Everything's at a stop till this happens, correct?
Yes, that's
Is that
correct.
what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
There's not any work that can be performed on the site at all until we abate the asbestos, and the asbestos abatement is what is in this resolution.
Okay, so it does mean the time is of the, I'm putting all this on the record. It does mean that time is of the essence, and that on Wednesday, you're going to start if we vote on Tuesday.
Yes, we would begin all the necessary contract paperwork preparations, yes.
Thank you.
I see no more questions. Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir.
We're kind of in this together.
Yes, sir.
Just trying to, I guess we're suspending our policies or rules to try to make this move, but does this actually occur as a vote, or do I need consensus to do this?
Well, not necessarily. Under your rules, under the organization of council business meeting agenda, which y'all adopted on April the 2nd of 2019, you have provisions in here that say that all proposed ordinances or resolutions have to be submitted to our office no later than 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 weeks prior to the council meeting, and that allows it to initially appear on the agenda. It also says that legislation can be added as long as it's appeared on the council agenda for calendar for upcoming legislation. There were some questions about items that were on the 3-week out agenda. That gets that in there in that regard. You also have under item C that under certain circumstances, the chair can waive these requirements, add items to the agenda, or 2 members of the council can waive these requirements under certain circumstances. I think that's what you've been hearing back and forth at this point in time, whether these are the types of certain circumstances. Y'all did only put in your rules of procedure at this point in time emergency or unavailability of a chair or vice chair, and then you put et cetera. So it's basically what this body would consider to be an unusual circumstance that would require it to be on the agenda. So if you determine that by a majority vote, then you can add it. If you do not, you cannot.
So if we took this action, and I guess I heard 2 things from you there. You know, I heard the word vote there at the end.
Yes, sir.
But I also heard that if 2 people would want to add it, it could be added.
Yes, sir. As long as there is the circumstances that you included in your rules to allow that to occur based upon what you've heard. Yes, sir.
By et cetera.
Yes, sir. Et cetera.
Well, I'm chair. I mean, I need help from a couple of people. I'm surprised you haven't spoken up. Have I got 2 people saying it's okay?
I said okay.
All right, we're gonna leave it on for next week. Sorry about that, buddy. You're right, but we're gonna get it done quicker. You're the correct one, but what difference does that make?
That'd be the first time.
Okay, please. Please read 7G.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1, final, for JDH Company Incorporated of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number Y18002201, replacement roofing system for Heritage House Building for an increased amount of $8,020.80 to release the remaining contingency amount of $11,979.20 for a revised contract amount of $175,237.
You okay? Okay. H, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 30019, authorizing the award of contract number Y18004-201 to Tri-State Roofing Contractors, LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, replacement roofing system for Brainerd YFD Center in the amount of $63,369, with a contingency amount of $6,500 for an amount not to exceed $69,869.
Okay, let's move on to I.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number C16005-201 to Integrated Properties LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, City Yards Carpenter Shop and Water Quality Storage Building in the amount of $235,428 with a contingency in the amount of $23,500 for a total amount of $258,928.
Okay, we will. J, please.
A resolution authorizing the award of blanket contract number D19002-201 to Tower Construction Company of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Stoneworks Construction LLC of Nashville, Tennessee, for demolition services for ECD for year 1 of a 3-year blanket for an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Bill, I've just got to ask, apparently we've had some discrepancies in the way that we issue our demolition contracts in the past. Do we feel like that we've got that worked out now in this contract?
That's my understanding. We have followed through the process that has been followed on all of our other standard construction contracts.
So, for year 1, does this council have to take any action for, this is basically a 3-year contract?
This resolution today would authorize year 1. There would be subsequent actions that would come to the council for.
So next year, we'd have to authorize year 2?
Correct. And then the following year, there would have to be an authorization for the 3rd year.
And what would there, I don't know how to word this really, would there have to be a good reason for us to not authorize year 2 and us be in compliance with this first contract?
Typically, on a blanket like this, there could be a variety of things. Either the contractor could choose to not opt for the later years, or if there were performance-related issues that the city saw that were unable to be resolved during that first year, then those might be reasons that the city might choose not to renew with one or both of the companies, depending on, since there are multiple awardees on this contract. So that's typically the way blankets.
And is there a primary and a secondary? No? No. So, what determines who gets which demolition site?
I think that we would work with ECD on that. I believe ECD would be determining that. Typically on our projects, there are, it happens through a variety of ways, one of which is either asking both contractors to submit both price and availability for a particular job. In some cases, time may be of the essence, and one of the 2 contractors may not be available as quickly. If they say they can't get to a job for 30 days and the other one can start in 2 weeks, that could be a difference as well, in addition to cost. So
And the contracts are written in such a way that they understand that?
I can verify that. I do not know that off the top of my head. but-
And were these contracts awarded based on low bid? How were these two awarded? How were these two selected?
I'm gonna ask Dennis Malone to step up and help me address that question.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
The contract was bid as unit price based on estimated quantities of different items that pertain to demolition contracts. So these two contractors were the lowest two bids of those who participated in the bidding.
And how many bids do we have?
I believe there was 3.
Okay. And these two were the lowest
Yes, sir.
for what we asked for in the
Yes.
bid solicitation? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, please read K.
A resolution to amend Resolution Number 29840, entitled "A Resolution Authorizing Administrator for the Department of Public Works," is hereby authorized to accept a cash grant from the Recycling Partnership to provide grant funding and technical assistance in support of the city's expansion of the curbside recycling program in the amount of $913,200, to accept a cash grant from the Recycling Partnership to provide grant funding and technical assistance in support of the city's expansion of the curbside recycling program in the amount of $943,200.
I don't see any lights, but Mr. Payne, I don't suppose this puts us in any kind of position to finally figure out what to do with glass, does it?
Unfortunately, I don't believe it does, so.
What are we going to expand?
It's some additional funding to provide additional recycle carts to more properties. So this is part of a multi-partnership, multi-group partnership that's providing the funds. So there's both some state funds and some private funds that are coming into this together that's allowing us to do that. So they had more money available, and we absolutely said we wanted to take it.
Great, good work. Councilman Gilbert.
2 questions, one on this and one don't pertain to nothing we talked about.
Okay.
If we get the grant, are we going to supply the need for that area to have the person that's putting these things together don't be burning up? Because I think right now it's just outdoors, correct? Or as you build these things?
As far as assembling the carts?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with those operations, but I'll be glad to talk to them.
Yeah, I think right now that person's outside building these things. There's no heat, no air, or no nothing. So if y'all can hopefully provide something for that person, I appreciate it. The other thing is, who is responsible for state route highway, like Highway 58, for example, when it comes to cutting grass? Are we responsible, or is state responsible?
I would have to go back and it probably depends on which section it is.
This is coming off 153.
Right.
Coming off 153, the grass tall as I am. I'm not exaggerating. And you know, we haven't had a good rain, so that grass been there for a long time. So can you find out who's responsible? If it's us, can we go ahead and get it cut, because it is high?
Are you talking about in the interchange itself or along?
As you come off the highway, in between the roads, you know, like you come off the highway, there's a section of grass after you get onto the main highway.
Are we talking about northbound or southbound 153?
Going north,
Okay.
going north towards
Going
Harrison.
north, okay.
Right. Well, really, it's on both sides, but the main side was on going north.
Okay, just right there at the ramps?
Yeah, as you go up the ramps, it's high, and then as you go further up, everything is cut, but just right there is really high.
Okay. I'll be sure to pass that along, and we'll determine whether or not there's a line in there between where the state has their mowing contract and where that part ends. So we'll determine where that is, and I'll pass that.
Could you email me so I can, if it goes high again, I know who to call?
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Good? Yeah. All right, thank you. Anybody else have anything for Mr. Payne? Thanks, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bailey, somehow you don't have any business on this agenda, but I would like to ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind. And maybe there's a couple others up here that would like to do the same. I don't know what she just did, but I'd be careful. Oh, okay. I want to ask one question, and I've got to get the attorney involved, and I'm looking, I see no other questions, so I'll go ahead and take the privilege. We had an email circulated to us a little while back about some pedestrians walking who were apparently, allegedly harassed by bicyclers 2 different times during their walk. And apparently, it's sort of a, if there's signage, bicycles can't be on the sidewalk, but other than that, it's wide open, and that's by state law, isn't it, Mr. Attorney? It's, if you don't have signage, bicycles can be on the sidewalks with the walkers.
I think you can designate paths in the city where bicycles can go in that regard. And there is, I guess there's been some concern in our office about what type of signage there was that was needed for that, yes.
Okay, would you, if I could find a partner up here, 2 people, to sponsor something, would you favor something that would at least state by law that pedestrians have the right-of-way on our sidewalks? I'm not trying to throw the bicycles off necessarily, because I think that'd probably be signage-wise very expensive. But would you favor a move like that?
I would.
Would you? Now, what do we got to do to get that done?
We currently have a provision about sidewalks on there. We have stuff about obstructing the sidewalks. I'd recommend that it maybe be put in that section here, or if you want to have a specific section about bicycles not having the right-of-way over pedestrians on sidewalks, we can do that.
Okay.
I will get that started for you.
Thank you. I might need to bid this co-sponsorship out. Okay, wait, one question, one more. Yeah, I knew you'd kind of start walking away. Where are we on the paving contract?
Oh, we're in the final stages. We're a little bit behind on that. As y'all know, we've gotten you into the habit of having a list for you sometime in July, so we're about a month late, but we're almost ready to present the list, and we're almost ready to bid the project and then present the list.
We haven't bid yet?
No, sir.
Okay, and so that bid would approximately 1 month out
Yes,
for
sir.
bid, and
Yes, sir.
and then it's got to come to us, and Councilman Mitchell will be asking to expedite that 1 week kind of thing after you open the bids. And
We'll go ahead and put it on the 3 weeks, sir, if that's helpful.
do you think it's gonna end up going into next spring to finish the contract?
We just talked about that with our engineer. We haven't resolved ourselves to that.
Okay,
We still like to be paving before it gets cold.
okay. Is that in the form of a question, or is that? Anybody got anything else from Mr. Bailey? Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. If not, we are adjourned till 6, I believe. There's no other committees? Okay, thank you.
I'll get you something started.
Thank you.